The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. On today's show, we're going to talk about Austin's match against LAFC, the upcoming friendly against Tigres, and we also have an interview with Austin FC goalkeeper coach Preston Burpo. My name's Landon and I'm joined as always by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley. Happy to be here recording on a Sunday night, which is a day earlier than normal, so hopefully
no news happens on Monday.
hopefully no news happens on Monday, and if you do, you'll get one of those like, hey, gang, this is Landon, and I'm dropping in with some exciting, we signed Gignac news that came out of the Josh Wolf press conference on Monday afternoon. Okay. I have a feeling that might not happen, though.
Yeah, hopefully not, but lots of soccer happening these days, huh, Jeremiah?
Yeah, there is. So did you go somewhere and watch Argentina and Brazil last night?
Yeah, me and Ashley went to Hop Squad and ran into some Los Verdes folks over there. And then I took Ashley's out of town for work this week. And so I took her to the airport and then came home and watched like 3 straight games of soccer after she left.
So England or Italy and England. And, I want to take joy in England just like falling apart at the end, year after year. But I almost felt bad for England fans. You never feel bad for like the team, but I feel a little bit bad for England fans after the way they played and those expectations, the early goal, and then to just get that close and not complete it again. What'd you think about that one?
I was honestly kind of the exact opposite. I kind of like this England team. I think there's some likable players on the team, and it's a bunch of young, exciting guys, and they're pretty fun to watch. And England fans are like extremely obnoxious to me, and so I was like, I liked the team to do well, but I wasn't gonna cry for. And this is unfair. This is if any fan base were judged by their worst members, then none of us are gonna look great, right? But for selfish reasons, I wanted Italy to win because I had Italy in like a kind of like a blind draw pool, and I ended up drawing Italy, and so I was gonna win some money if Italy won, and they won. So, cha-ching.
So England is the Columbus of Europe, I guess is what I'm hearing. Because I know you like watching that team play too, and don't always love the fans.
Yeah.
And was that the Austin FC UK blind pool, or was it a different one?
No, it was just with a few random friends. It was a small group.
Okay, well, I thought I missed out on that. I knew in that one the other one I was in it. I drew the Czech Republic, and so it was a run longer than I thought, but it eventually ended way before the final. Yeah, and then we've got U.S. playing Haiti right now at this moment. In case you wonder why I keep glancing off to the side.
Oh,
check it out.
I got to see the first goal, and that was it. So I have it recording now. So in other interesting news, Jeremiah, I don't know if you realize this, but this is our 50th episode.
I did not realize that, and that seems kind of crazy.
It really does. Yeah, so congratulations to us. And I want to take the opportunity to thank you for all that you do for the show, because it's been like kind of a wild ride that we ended up on at first together kind of accidentally, and then continued it intentionally together. And yeah, it's been very enjoyable, and I just want you to know how much I appreciate how much you do for all of this.
Well, that means a lot to me. And at the moment when we didn't know if we were going to do a show together ever again, back in May of last year, maybe
something like that. Yeah, spring of 2020.
When I was like making that decision, one of the things that stressed me out the most was about whether we could keep doing a podcast together. So I'm very, very happy that we found a solution for that. And I'm extra happy that people that aren't, your mom or like the 8 close friends of ours that we have that listen to every show and have through all these versions to listen to it, because it's also been really great to keep doing this and hopefully keep doing it better and really build what is a decent sized audience. And so I want to thank everybody that has been along for this whole journey, and those of you who weren't around for the painful early parts and sort of get the part now where we've figured it out a little bit too.
Yeah, we're definitely working on our Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours right now. I tried to do the math and I was like, maybe we're already there. And I did like some rough math. I was like, not even close. not even close. But it's more hours than we had 2 years ago. And I think hopefully that comes across in the final product. But yeah, thanks, Jeremiah, and thanks to all the listeners for sticking with us for so long. All right, let's jump into some soccer talk. So first thing we're going to cover is the LAFC match. A little bit of a bummer that one was. What were your impressions of that game overall? Or what was the sentiment leaving the stadium last week?
I think that was the perfect sentiment leaving the stadium, but it was even one, if there's ever been a game where the vibe was just off, I felt like it was that one. All the way from when I got to Hop Squad before, like it just felt like there weren't as many people there. I mean, it's a Wednesday night game, right? So
yeah,
there's just like there weren't that like the energy wasn't as much as it was the week before. There didn't seem like to be as many people. You know, we walked over to the stadium and got to the seats, and it was just like an off night all night, and then that led into the game, and then yeah, when it was over, you just got on the train and went home. It was just a strange night all the way around.
Yeah, and it did feel off in the stadium. Mind you, when I watched it back on the television broadcast, I was still like, it is loud as hell in that stadium. And like the fact that it like in the stadium, comparatively speaking, it felt like a little subdued. It is still extremely loud. And so this is not criticism or anything of anybody or like even saying it's bad. It was just like less than it was in the games before, which was kind of, I think a lot of it's just a Wednesday night. Also, like the Portland game was such a like this culmination and like this peak of all of these emotions and expectations, and you could feel it walking into that game in Portland, like something's going to happen tonight, something big's going to happen tonight, and then it did. And then coming into this game, I think there's maybe like some nerves because it was LAFC, and then it was a Wednesday night, and then plus kind of the hangover from the Portland game. So I think it was kind of a lot of things combined, but the very center of that supporter section was still definitely bringing the noise and bringing the energy.
Yeah, there's a story I wanted to tell about that, and especially because it's LAFC, and I was talking to somebody, I don't remember who, a couple days after, and so I went. The one LAFC game I've been to was a Wednesday night in September, but it was the night they won the Supporter Shield versus Houston in 2019. And they have this reputation as being like the best fan culture in MLS, right? But I mean, the 32-52 was like loud and full and jumping, but the rest of the stadium was empty. So, I feel like our experience last week was way better than that, which is known as the best fan experience in MLS, and still like everybody was just so like frustrated, and worked up about how like it was a down game. And I think at some point people need to appreciate like the specialness that they built and just accept that. I mean, yeah, it could have been better, but it still wasn't bad, to your point.
Yeah, for sure. So leading into this game, I think most Austin fans were kind of on a high, right, after that Portland game. And we were wondering if we could carry that into this LAFC game. LAFC's been struggling a little bit. They've, over the last few games, have found a bit more form, and Vela looks healthy and back in form. But overall, they still look a bit like a struggling team. And so we thought maybe we could do it. But the day, I don't remember when all this information came out. I guess Gallagher we knew wasn't going to play. Then there were some rumors before the game saying that Pochettino was maybe not going to play, and then that ended up being true, that he was not even on the bench for the game. Turns out he had a slight abductor injury. It doesn't seem like it's anything super serious, that it was more of just a precaution to keep him out to prevent it from becoming something serious. But it definitely kept us from playing our best lineup, and had, again, very few midfield options that we could play. And I think that led to a lot of the problems that we're going to talk about as the game went on. As far as formation goes, at the graphic that they put on the broadcast said a 4-4-2. And Adrian Mike on the broadcast kept talking about a 4-4-2, but I don't think that ever actually happened. I think it was extremely similar to, in attack, it was very similar to what we saw last week against Portland, kind of that 3-5-2 look that we saw. And then in defense, it was more like a 4-2-3-1. And so instead of like the straight up 4-2-2 with the normally it's Pochettino and Dominguez kind of at the top, Fagundes was kind of playing in Pochettino's role. And instead of him pushing up high, he kind of dropped back, and it was a pretty clear like 4-2-3-1 in defense. And I think a lot of that had to do with just being a bit more solid defensively and not getting broken on the counterattack, because it's something LAFC is extremely good at. But I thought there was, with the lack of players, it was hard to know. Like, I think there were two options, right? You could play Diego on the wing, where he looked really good against Portland. But then, because Pochettino's not there, you'd have to play maybe Lil Sebastian in the midfield. The other option is play Diego in the midfield, and you have to play someone else on the wing. It ended up being Kakuta Mane. So I think it was kind of like pick your poison there. Like, you're going to have an obvious weak link in one of those spots, and they chose the midfield strength and keeping Diego in the midfield. But yeah, Wolf was definitely in a tough spot picking that lineup for sure.
Yeah, this goes back to an opinion that I've sort of felt too, is we have exactly enough attacking players to be competent in the attack. And once you start losing, like if you don't have Gallagher and you don't have Pochettino and you lose access to Pereira at some point, like it's just hard to be, they're just not deep enough at this point to be like sustain threats in the attack given where we are.
Right. So starting off this game, things looked okay, right? Like I thought we looked very much in the game. There was a few semi-dangerous chances. In the 24th minute, Carlos Vela ends up scoring a goal, but it got called back because of VAR review. And there's a very clear foul in my mind. In the moment in the stadium, I thought it was an obvious foul. And then watching it back on the broadcast, when they showed a certain angle of the replay, it was definitely a foul. But overall, I thought this ref did not have a very good night. And I think this was one example of him missing that foul that led to a potential goal that could have very easily stood and ended up getting called back thanks to VAR. I think that was kind of a turning point in the game. It started looking a little bit more frantic after that. And then a few minutes later, Danny Pereira goes down and has to be pulled out. And I think it got even worse at that point. But we're already short in the midfield. And so I was talking about picking your poison, either starting Berhalter or starting Mane. Well, after the 38th minute, congratulations, you're starting both of them.
You get both, yeah.
And so 39th minute, not long after that, Cifuentes ends up scoring the first goal for LAFC. So this one, I think we can all agree, is mostly on Brad Stuver. They were working around the back. Stuver receives it right in front of his goal. Little Sebastian is kind of checking back and calling for the ball, but doing it a little bit casually. And I think that combined with Stuver playing it way too wide for him to get to. And Kim Moon-Hwan, who is very fast, ends up picking it off, plays a 1-2 off of Vela, takes a shot. Stuver saves that shot, but then it falls to Cifuentes, who has pretty much an open net to put it into. And that makes it 1-0. So, yeah, like I said, I think that's mostly on Stuver, but I feel like he's earned a few mistakes before we can actually start blaming him for anything.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And he talked about that. Well, he did the Verde and Black podcast with Adrian Healy, and talked about how, you have to be, it's two things you have to be. You have to be perfect in stopping every shot, and you have to have a very short memory. And, he wasn't perfect in the moment. And so everybody sees it, because when you're a keeper, your mistakes are magnified in a way that nobody else's is. But he did a good job of having a short memory from it and bouncing back from it. And I expect that he will learn from it, and we'll hear from Preston Burpo a little more about that later on.
Yeah, for sure. going into halftime, it still felt a little bit frantic, but it never felt like we were completely out of it yet. And then watching the rest of the game the second time through, I kind of expected it to look like LAFC was just dominating us, but that really wasn't the case. Like, it was not a one-sided game by any means. It was very reminiscent of the San Jose and Columbus games where we were moving the ball, getting into good spaces, and decision making and execution was letting us down as soon as we stepped across the imaginary line that demarcated the final third of the pitch. And just like, okay, we get over here, do the wrong thing every time. And that's what it seemed like was happening.
Yeah, and it was one of those weird ones where sometimes the wrong thing was shooting and sometimes the wrong thing was passing. But when presented with a choice, we always did the wrong one. Hey, did you ever ever do choose your own adventure books?
Yeah.
Do you remember those? Yeah, that's kind of what we were doing. We choose your own adventure, and
Jared Stroud's adventure always ended up with getting eaten by a dragon or something.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of our night this week.
He shot. He had 2 early chances where he shot and it got blocked, where he maybe could have cut it back. And then later in the game, he had 2 chances where he should have shot and had a pretty clear opportunity to it would have been a tough goal, but he could have at least challenged the keeper and maybe forced the keeper to spill it and maybe win a second ball goal or something like that. And those times when he had those, he tried to cut it back or play a pass inside. And so he was just picking the wrong option every time, it seemed. And yeah, just unfortunate, but also I think we've kind of seen what he's capable of. And I don't know that he's going to get much better at doing some of these things. And it's, not a knock on him. I would love to have him as an option off the bench, but if he continues to be one of our main attacking threats, we are going to continue to not score goals.
I think that's completely fair. And maybe it's something he can work on in the offseason with commitment or training or whatever. But that's where we really miss. It's weird to think we really miss John Gallagher, who's the guy who's doesn't. Yeah, it's a similar league track record, right? I mean, he's never lit the league up anywhere, but he seems to have at least shown touches of taking the next step in Austin in terms of being a finisher and a goal scorer on the wing.
Yeah. So in the 74th minute, there was one really big chance. It was off of a corner, and Ring was more or less unmarked and tried to kind of redirect it to the back post. He was I think just outside the 6-yard box, somewhere around there, maybe a little closer even, and was unmarked. The ball was moving fast, so it was kind of tough, and he was moving as well, but he absolutely should have put it on frame at least and probably should have scored it, and ends up pushing it a little bit wide and missing the goal entirely. But talking about the goal or the game not being as one-sided as I remembered, I think at that point, if that ball goes in, that's a new game from that point. Just from a momentum standpoint, I don't know that we would have been able to score another goal based on how we were playing, but as far as just how the momentum was going, I think that could have swung it big time. And so that was a pretty big miss by Ring there. Not long after that, in the 89th minute, Diego Rossi ends up killing it off with a goal assisted by Carlos Vela. This was talking about giving Stuver the blame for the first goal. Little Sebastian ended up giving this ball away pretty naively, and I think he did that a few times in the game, but should have played it a little bit safer. Gives up the ball, and if you do that with LAFC, they're going to punish you, and they did 2 times to us.
Yeah, they did, and that's sort of where the search for the exits came, I think, during the week from not during the week, during the match from a lot of folks. It's a 2-1. 89 minutes. How much extra time did there end up being? Just
there's quite a bit
more than I thought. I couldn't
because there's some injuries, and LAFC seemed from about the 65th minute on or so, they were kind of milking. Anytime someone was on the ground, they would lay down for a while, and so they seemed like they were happy with kind of letting the clock run down in the latter stages of the game.
Yeah, but I think you really hit on it, and this is. we can talk later about, we talked about good Austin or bad Portland. I mean, I think in some way when you're like, you make a mistake and you have Carlos Vela and Diego Rossi on the other end of it, like you expect to be punished for that. And that's something we don't have that yet. Maybe 3 years from now when our DPs have been playing together, when Pochettino, Fagundes have like figured each other out and they're connecting, like maybe it'll be different, but it's just, we're not in the same place in this moment.
Yeah, for sure. So getting into some of the player performances, we just mentioned Sebastian Berhalter. What was your impression of him? Did you have an opinion on him?
I mean, most of what I picked up was just from the stadium that night, because I did not rewatch it afterwards. I meant to and didn't get around to it. And I really felt like he looked lost a lot of the match. He seemed to turn the ball over a lot, made some easy mistakes. I mean, I guess he wasn't playing in a spot that he was expecting to play, and probably not his most natural position, but he did not look like a starting 11 MLS player to me when watching it that night.
Yeah, I agree. I do think he has a lot of potential though. Because he showed some flashes of some pretty special things during the game. When he receives the ball in open space, he's got a really smooth half turn and can kind of turn out of pressure and passes the ball quite well. I saw I can't remember what game it was, but he made a few like kind of long diagonal passes, which if you're familiar with who his father is, Greg Berhalter, he's famous for like only playing sixes who can play that kind of ball. And so Michael Bradley was his darling in the national team. Even after Bradley was kind of probably past it, he could still play that long diagonal pass. And so he kept getting minutes. And then Jackson Ewell is maybe the guy who's getting more minutes than he should because of that. And then it was Will Trapp for a while. But I saw someone make the joke online that Sebastian Berhalter is good at making those passes because it was the only way he got to eat when he was a kid. But he does have some really, really good skills, but there were some moments where LAFC's press was ferocious. They're a very, very good in their pressing game. And so there's a few times he would get surrounded and should have, or maybe could have, either just play it long or play a safe pass or drop it back or do something. And he tried to do a little bit too much or hesitated a little bit too long until the pressure was too much and ended up coughing the ball up. And so I think, again, talking about missing Denny Pereira, these are moments where Denny Pereira has the ability to kind of dribble through some of those situations and is shown to be, I think he's made some mistakes over the season as well, but has been overall, especially for as young as he is, a pretty good decision maker as well when he's on the ball. And it was, as high an upside as I think Berhalter has, he's not the finished product right now and is not as close to being that product as Pereira is. And so, I wish the best for him and still have high hopes for him going forward. But if he has to start more games for us in the future, I'm going to be pretty nervous about it.
Yeah, you just got to remind everybody he's still young. So we'll move on to somebody who did get a start that I think a lot of people were calling for, Kekuta Mane. And I think generally on that night, people were pretty disappointed by it. But then Chris Bills posted an impassioned defense of Mane's play, which I felt like was, all the bad Mane. Like it was limited. You kind of know where he's going to go, I feel like, an attack. So he seemed like he was really predictable that night, but it seems like maybe you have a different opinion after rewatching it beyond that night.
So I was very down on Kekuta Mane that night in the stadium, and I saw Chris Bills post that tweet saying like, I think Mane was actually pretty good. And I was like, you're wrong, but I'll keep that in mind as I rewatch this and see, like, reassess my opinion of it essentially. And on the second watch, he was much better than I thought he was. I think especially in like the first 20 minutes, he did some pretty useful things. And for long stretches in the game, he was pretty good. And even like the stuff that I've maybe guessed that he wouldn't be very good at, or at least worse than Gallagher and Stroud, like tracking back and doing some more like that dirty work. Mane did quite a bit of that and was like pretty good at it during the course of the game. I think the thing that I didn't change my mind about is that he still made some very poor decisions and like failed pretty in a pretty big ways in the moments when it mattered most. And so, yeah, did he do some good things? Sure, he did. But as far as like him solving any problems for us, I think he offers a different set of problems to solve. And so, like, if Gallagher is healthy, I'm still choosing Gallagher every time. And so I don't know. I still think Mane is like a bit of a Hail Mary. Like if we're chasing a game late, throw him on for 10 or 15 minutes and see if he can make something happen. But I don't really trust him to do much more than that still. Even though I did change my opinion about his performance in this game, my overall opinion of him is not changed very much at all.
Yeah, my next opinion I want to offer is on Diego Fagundez's shorts. They seem to start short, and they keep getting shorter throughout the match. So he's got to be rolling them up, I assume, is what's going on. And I have a report from somebody asked him somewhere, and he said, like, the angrier he gets, the more he rolls his shorts up.
Yeah, he did it during, he was streaming. He has like a Twitch stream and like Twitch, streams video games. And somebody asked him in the chat there, and he said during that, he said the angrier I get, the higher the shorts go.
Which I thought was awesome. And I think somehow I saw a connection to like the ref or a non-call that you were talking about. Like I think he had the same opinion on the officiating that you did in the LAFC game, which I think caused his shorts to get shorter during the night. But I mean, he played a good Diego game. I felt like, he covered the field. He seemed a little bit more worn down again, I thought, from this one than he has before, but that's completely understandable given how much space he's occupying. I mean, how did you feel about how he played?
Yeah, I think he was overall solid. In the last couple of games, I feel like he's gotten the ball like in the box or like in some really tight spaces, and his touch has kind of let him down. And I'd like to see him. I think that would be something that could kind of like elevate him to that next level, and is probably the thing that keeps him from being like the number 10 playmaker that we can really depend on. He's been an extremely important part of our team, but I think unless he's able to kind of elevate that specific part of his game, we do still need someone else to kind of take up that mantle and do that. If we do get that, I still want Diego on the field. I just think he's still extremely useful in a lot of other ways, but that one little thing is just like his touch and like movement in those really tight spaces or what's going to separate what he's doing from like an elite number 10. But overall, I think again, he was still really good. Like he has always been. I don't know that he's had a bad game necessarily for Austin.
And he's done it from all over the field, right? I mean, he's played everywhere in the midfield and on the wing. So far, and gives it his all. So it's definitely a good player to have to do that.
And then I think the last player we'll talk about is Brad Stuver. We already kind of mentioned this, but that mistake that led to the goal. Aside from that, it seemed like he had a pretty good game. The 2 goals, I don't think there's anything aside from making that pass. Once they came at him and were making the shots, he did well. The second goal was from point blank nearly. There's nothing he could have really done. So aside from that pass, he had a really good game, but he did post a tweet after the game that I think kind of broke a lot of people's hearts.
Yeah, he did. That was probably the hardest part of getting home, that night, and reflecting on the game and just seeing that, because he did own it completely and said, "That one is on me, Austin SC fans. Put us in a hole early. Your support, as always, is truly appreciated. We move on to the next together." I mean, and just to see the guy that's carried us, so much. He's been the player of the match, like all of May and all of June. And for him to make that mistake finally and then own it that way, it broke my heart a little bit. And I wanted to make sure and acknowledge that, because he's an incredible player in person still.
Yeah, and lots of fans, and I think even some of the other players are very quick to respond and say, like, keep your head up, dude. Like, we would be literally in a much worse position right now if it weren't for you this season. So there's a lot of people kind of giving him some love after that, which is really good to see. Let's go through some of the stats real quick. So Austin ended up with 63% possession, so good to see them at least moving the ball and keeping the ball pretty well. It was, again, I think this game reminded me a lot of, I think I've already said this, but the San Jose game and the Columbus game, but against teams that have players who can finish the ball, like finish goals really well. We are getting into those attacking areas and just doing nothing.
Yeah, and a note on that Josh specifically talked about in the press conference after the game, said that the team did not have the calm to create overloads this week. And I think when we talked about the Portland match, we talked about, especially on the, I guess it was the Gallagher goal, right? Where there was like several players in the box, Diego running guys off, and they were creating the space and opportunity to score, to finish goals, and they didn't do it at all this week. And he brought that up. Did you observe that? And do you kind of agree that that's the biggest difference between the way they finished against Portland versus the way they didn't finish against LA?
Yeah, I think that is a big difference, and I do think a lot of that is still down to personnel, though. Playing Diego on the wing against Portland let us play our three of our best players. Essentially, it allowed us to put most of our best players on the field at the same time by putting Pereira, Pochettino, and Ring in the midfield and putting Fagundes on the wing. Having all four of those guys on the field is good. They've been four of our better looking players all season. And the way that Diego moved from the wing and then kind of the freedom that setup gave Pochettino to move around, it did create overloads. And like you said, that Gallagher goal was a really good example where Pochettino starts between the center backs, runs all the way out to the right wing. And then you end up having like Diego coming across and a lot of movement and kind of causing a lot of problems for the defense in those moments. And that wasn't really happening in this game. And I think it's partly due to players' tendencies, and like Mane isn't the same player as Diego when he's playing out on the wing, and so he's going to play it a little bit differently. But then also just not having the guys to be able to take advantage of those moments. And so, I still think right now our best 11 involves Diego playing wide and having Pochettino and Pereira healthy, but who knows if that's going to happen. We don't really have any word on Pereira yet. Pochettino should be back soon, but hopefully Danny's not out for too long, because I think he is a part of our best 11, and just by being able to play other players in other positions when he's on the field helps out a lot.
Yeah, it does. And Beasler talked in the post game about how when they play out of the back and do it right, it puts a lot of pressure on teams, which they did against Portland, and he talked about them being sloppy, but part of that's also, to your point, the quality of the players who are on the field, who, and their ability to be sloppy or not. And, we saw not the best version of ourselves on that game. We did outshoot LA 14-12. A lot of those shots came from outside the box, which we talked about last week is not conducive toward goal scoring. And we didn't have a ton on target. We actually had fewer shots on target than LA did also, which led to sort of a mess of a performance ultimately in the end.
Going into some of the just like thoughts and narratives coming out of the game, I know Chris Bills in his story called it a bit of a reality check. What do we think about that? Is that accurate? Was this a reality check for Austin FC?
I think it was a little bit of a reality check, but again, to me, it comes back to health. Maybe it comes back to like the lack of depth in the roster, but we were missing a ton of our attacking talent. And then also, I feel like LA deserves a lot of credit too. We tend to watch all these. We tend to think about these matches all just in terms of like, was Austin the best version of Austin or not? But just like our last week discussion was about, should we how much credit should we take for a Portland team that was a little beat up? I think we have to give credit to LA. I mean, they're deep, they're strong, they're talented. They're finally putting it a little bit together. They've got Rossi and Vela, like we talked about. They've got a ton of potential and a ton of talent.
Yeah, this is something I was thinking about, and then I saw Kevin Morris post this on Twitter, but I think it is a reality check in a way that this is what a really good MLS team looks like, right?
Right.
And just like matching up man to man, you could probably say all of their players were better than all of our players on the night, and probably just in general. I would say there might be one or two guys that I would pick over their guys if I were picking a team today. And so I think it was a bit of a reality check in that regard. I think performance-wise, yeah, injuries hurt it a little bit. But as far as just like being a really elite team in this league, and I know LAFC is not doing great this year, but those players are undeniably talented. And I think there are moments, we've been singing Hector Jimenez's praises over the last few weeks. I think he got a little bit exposed by Raheem Edwards, and Raheem Edwards is not one of the players that you talk about on LAFC for being amazing. He's not even the first 5 or 6 names you name on that team, and he made Hector Jimenez look not very good several times that night. And so I think little moments like that made me realize that, like, okay, Austin is showing signs of progress, and there's reasons to be optimistic, and there's reinforcements coming and these new signings, but there's still quite a ways to go before we reach the heights of what an MLS team can be.
Yeah, I think that's so. I was just looking. I mean, and LA's in 5th now in the West. So I mean, a not good LAFC team, or not great, not hitting on all cylinders. Is they're still doing okay. It's just, I mean, the names. So if you just look at the names on that roster compared to the names on the Austin roster, I mean, it's not even close in terms of familiarity or experience or production or anything like that at all. One of the other things I noticed watching is Alex Ring seemed to be in a bad mood all night, and I don't know if that was just the view from the supporters section, but did you observe that too?
I did see him. I think I saw like one of the times Berhalter turned the ball over in midfield. I think I saw him just kind of like give him a glance, and I don't know if he even said anything, but he was just looking at him, and it was a look that I would have not wanted to be on the receiving end of. I think you're right. Did you see any other moments where you thought he looked angry, or was it just like his general demeanor overall?
I mean, overall it did, but yeah, I mean, at the end he seemed to be sort of up in the defenders' faces a little bit, like at the very end of the match, and even like going off the field, he was like jawing on Wolf some too. So he was just like in a bad mood all the way around.
Wow,
like
I didn't see that.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, when they were kind of going off the field toward because they come down, down to the end, down to the south end there, but he was not a happy dude, which I seems to fit, right? He's super passionate, and I think with that performance, I could completely understand why. But he was at the end of the match, he was sort of all over everybody that happened to make the misfortune of being like around Alex Ring after a 2-0 loss.
So like, how are we feeling coming out of this one?
Yeah, I think Josh talked at the end about it being fortunate that we don't have another MLS game until the 22nd against Seattle. And I think that's how I feel too, is that let's take a couple weeks off. Some people need breaks. Djitte needs a little bit of training with the team. Hopefully we get Pochettino and Pereira back, and this is like a different team 2 weeks from the match than it was on that night.
Yeah, and at least Gallagher seems like a pretty realistic option to be back. Pochettino seems like a pretty realistic option. We'll probably have, like, as this episode comes out, we'll likely already have more information about Pereira, but that one seems a little less of a sure thing just because it said it was an abdomen issue, and you just never know with those kinds of things how long it's going to take to heal up. But yeah, I think the break will definitely be good to get some guys fit, to let some guys rest. So yeah, hopefully they'll get enough rest. over these next couple of weeks. We do have this game coming up against Tigres though, which would be great. Like if we had a whole like second squad to run in and play this game, but we don't really. And so I'm not sure how much rest we're actually going to get. But this Tigres game it's kind of a big deal and it's pretty exciting. So for fans who, I know this is kind of a strange thing, especially if you're not like a hardcore soccer fan or haven't been following that long, to be just randomly playing another team from another country for no real reason. But Tigres is one of the bigger Liga MX teams. Definitely one of the biggest and most passionate fan bases in Mexico. They have some really big star players, some guys that you'll recognize from the Mexican national team. Is it Andre Pierre? What is his first name? Gignac? Andre Pierre, I believe, is his first name. Anyway, Gignac. He's one of the biggest stars in Liga MX, maybe the biggest star in Liga MX, a French striker that's been there for the last few years and just has been amazing. And so some really big stars, a really big brand in Mexico and in the United States, which is part of the reason why these teams are coming here. So you'll see Mexican teams coming over and kind of playing exhibition matches against each other, kind of like a publicity tour where they're playing against other teams. And so Tigres is doing that now, but instead of playing other Mexican teams on every stop, one of the stops is in Austin and they're going to be playing against Austin FC. So I think that makes sense why Tigres is playing this game. They can make a lot of money coming to the States and playing these games, right? And it's a good marketing effort. Why is Austin playing this game is a question I've been asking myself.
Yeah, that is a fair question. Yeah, for Tigres, it's like every big international team does like a summer. You do a summer tour, right, of the U.S. and I know like the English teams do that, and
right,
some of the other Mexican teams do that. I think for Austin, I guess it's just the only thing I can think of is Austin FC wanting to like expose the league to MLS and the club to the Tigres fan base. I mean, there's two things that showed that a little bit today to me. One, Monterrey is closer than any MLS city other than Dallas or Houston, I believe. So
really?
Yeah, it's only 6.5 hours away, and I'm pretty sure that makes it nearer. So, they're almost a local. But I thought the club today put a video out on Twitter with like Ruben Pizarro from Univision, who's been sports guy for a million years, and like he grew up a Tigres fan, and now he's an Austin FC guy, and it shows him with his Tigres jersey and his Austin jersey. I think they're just trying to milk a little bit of that market of people who either like were born in Mexico or have Mexican heritage who've moved to Austin and like try to build that connection. Because on the field, I don't know that it makes a ton of sense, and they're not going to make a lot of extra money off of it because all the season ticket holders are getting tickets as part of their package. But I think it's just building that relationship from among the fan base is the reason that I can think of that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. And just maybe putting Austin on the map to fans of Tigres or just fans of Liga MX who have not ever thought about MLS or not really thought about Austin FC, and either going to the stadium that night or tuning in on TV and watching it and seeing this beautiful brand new stadium and this amazing supporter section and the atmosphere that's been created in that stadium. It's a great advertisement for the team and for the league, right? So I think you're right that it makes a lot of sense just as kind of a marketing exercise. So what are we expecting out of this game?
Yeah, I think you're seeing the great supporter section on TV is that one of the things that I wonder the most about, because will it be? I mean, Tigres has a bunch of fans, and I imagine not a lot of them will be in the South End, but I imagine there'll be a lot of them there.
For invading opposing teams' stadiums and making them like some of the more poorly supported teams or poorly attended teams, making it look like Tigres home games. And so I don't know that it's quite going to be to that extent, but you can expect to see a lot of yellow jerseys in the stadium on Tuesday night.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be a lot closer. I mean, it won't be 50-50, but it'll be a whole lot closer to that than we've seen from the 200 Portland fans or 250 LA fans or whatever that we've seen make attendance so far. And then, lineup wise, it would be nice if we had an academy that was fully built out so we could play some kids, because I don't think we have a choice other than to play some of our regulars, just in terms of like depth and availability.
I would imagine that they'll kind of let us have unlimited substitutions in this game. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a mix in the starting lineup being a mix of some of the starters and some younger guys or like some fringe guys. And then any of the guys who have played a lot of minutes over this season coming out at halftime or coming on at halftime or coming on for the last 30 minutes or something. But I would expect to see heavy rotation out of this. I mean, in a different set of circumstances, you might want to get some experience, like international experience against a big and a talented Mexican team, which is good practice for future CONCACAF Champions League aspirations and things like that. But given the situation Austin is in as far as injuries and depth goes, I think you need to just put out a team that can play this game without like overworking anybody and without getting anybody hurt.
Yeah, and I feel like that's like when Josh was talking about getting players back, and we may hear more about this on Monday after the match. Like it was as if the Tigres game, didn't exist in terms of injuries and things, which I think makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, but that being said, there's only so many changes you can make, right? Like,
right,
unless we're gonna see Aiden Stanley in midfield again. But like, we do not have a second right back right now, so like, it's Hector Jimenez or Hector Jimenez, and then if like, okay, we're going to play Aiden Stanley in the midfield. Okay, then Kolmanich has to play left back because, again, we do not have another left back. And so there are only so many changes you can make until you just run out of players. And so I think that's going to be interesting. And we're probably going to see some guys play in some positions that we have not seen them in before and maybe won't ever see them in again. But Wolf just needs to make sure that we survive this game.
I think it's the fairest description that you can have of the game of this game for sure.
Even if it's not going to be the strongest lineup, this is a really great opportunity for Austin fans to kind of showcase themselves to the world, right? To both MLS and to Liga MX. And so I think there's still a lot to go and be proud of and cheer for during the game. Another thing to be excited about is the possibility of seeing Moussa Djitte play his first game in an Austin FC jersey. We have not heard for sure if that will be the case, but I think he's probably in town already. We haven't seen any confirmation of that yet, but Claudio said in the press conference after he was signed that the Seattle game on the 22nd would be his first MLS game he would be available for. And ideally he would be ready for this Tigres game and get 20 or 30 minute run out. But hopefully we will get to see him, because that would be very exciting just to see him at all. But also it would be great for him to get some minutes with the team before playing a competitive game.
Yeah. And like you said to me earlier today, Claudio's not in the business of just like throwing dates or facts out. I would say he's very conservative about that. So if he did say that, I think it's quite likely that it's going to happen, that he'll get some time, and which could really be the highlight of the match if you're an Austin FC fan.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I don't know if this is a thing worth getting excited about, but I was really happy about it, that I think he's going to be wearing number 99. I was got on Instagram. I was trying to figure out if he was in town, and so I got on Instagram, was trying to find his account, and he doesn't post very much on his account. And I was like, okay, maybe I can find like his agent or somebody. And I ended up finding, it seems like it's like a team of people who represent him, but I found some pictures there where it looks like where he was like in France signing his contract and was holding up an Austin FC jersey with the number 99, which is the number he wore at Grenoble. And I was like, oh, please let us have a number 99 on this team. That would be awesome. And that's what that's what number was on his jersey. So hopefully we're gonna get some weird football numbers on our team. All right. Anything else before we move on to the interview, Jeremiah?
No, I'm looking forward. Well, we've already done the interview, so I'm definitely looking forward to the interview. But I didn't know what to expect from talking to a goalkeeper coach, and I thought Preston was, interesting. I think I learned more about keeper tactics than I ever knew before, and I think it should be a really good conversation. So hopefully, folks will enjoy it.
Yeah, and like we did get like a little bit nerdy, but like not in like a MLSy Tam Gam kind of way. It was like a soccer nerdy kind of way. And like, yeah, Preston gave us some really insightful information for sure. So we're gonna take a quick break and we'll be right back with Preston Burpo. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education.
You can go to fvf.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fvf.law. All right, we are joined today by Austin FC goalkeeper coach Preston Burpo. Preston, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. So to start off with, just tell us how you're enjoying Austin so far and what attracted you to this opportunity in the first place.
Sure. I'll start with the attraction of Austin. To begin with, Josh Wolf. I mean, he was the attraction. I know him, through working with him in DC years ago for a year, and then watching him and Berhalter build what they did in Columbus, and then obviously what they were doing with the national team. And Josh obviously was a massive part of that. So when Josh approached me about coming down here, talked to me about that he was going to use similar game models that he had worked with Berhalter. It was a pretty easy sell, and just knowing Josh as a person, how hard he works, his dedication to this whole coaching thing, it was pretty easy to say yes. And then seeing what Claudio had done from afar, watching what he had built in New York City, knowing that he would be a massive part of this thing, and then obviously the ownership group, like starting with Precourt. I mean, hearing about the facility, hearing about the stadium, seeing the fans grow in the numbers that they were, I mean, kind of astonishing. So I'll add it all up. I mean, it was a really, really simple answer to say yes to here. And in terms of how I'm feeling about Austin, yeah, they've got great food, they've got running trails. I'm a vegan, so there's plenty of food around for that, and they have some decent breweries too. So that's always good. Yeah, but everyone seems to be nice as can be here in Texas. So it's been very welcoming. Then on top of all that, I actually have a sister and her husband live in Austin, and my father lives here as well. So yeah, it all kind of came together, and it was a pretty seamless transition with all things considered, having to move from New York.
So goalkeepers are a bit of a different breed, famously, right? They are essentially playing a different game to the rest of the players on the field for a lot of it. And so with your experience, you were a pro goalkeeper for about 15 years. You've been coaching for almost 10 years now. What can you tell us about the goalkeeper mentality and how that differs from the rest of the team, the outfield players?
Sure. Well, first off, I think most players are different. I think once you get to this level, being a professional, you have to be different. You have to, like, for instance, as forwards go, like, they're going to get a few chances in the game. They might miss a couple. They might score one. And just the mentality of knowing that mistakes will happen, but at the same time, yeah, you embrace the challenge of it, you embrace the pressure of it. Center backs, right? I mean, the way we play, you have to play out of the back, and one bad pass can lead to a chance. So the whole idea of keepers are just so different. I don't totally buy into that philosophy. Now at the same time, yeah, obviously they're the last person in the defending. But yeah, I mean, you've got to take on a lot of challenges, and then in more so with this club, the way we play, and as you guys know, Brad is the starts our attack on building out from the goalkeeper. So yeah, there is a lot of pressure in that, and I never had to deal with anything like this the way Brad's had to deal with this. Right, sitting in front of 20,000 fans, 20,000 plus fans, and playing balls out of the back in tight spaces, and he's taken this on in a huge way and embraced it and said, "Yeah, I'm up for the challenge." So, yeah, I mean, everyone's different in their own ways, but yeah, I mean, you've got to be able to handle the pressure of a lot as a goalkeeper for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned. I think it's interesting to hear you say that you think, like, people always say, like, oh, goalkeepers are the crazy ones. So it's interesting to hear you say, like, to kind of push back against that and say, like, oh, they're just soccer players. And so,
yeah, I do believe that. Now, I'm sure some of my teammates would say I was a little different back in the day, but yeah, I mean, yeah, and obviously, yes, you've got to be willing to take shots with close range into your face, into your body. You've got to learn how to be connected to your line and good footwork, and you've got to work on your speed and your strength. And so I do think there's different facets to what the goalkeepers have to do, and what they have to learn and what they have to be. But to be totally different mentality wise, I mean, the pressure if you go through each position, it's all very high. It's all very high. And I don't think the goalkeeper's pressure is so much more than a striker that gets paid a lot of money to finish his chances.
So goalkeepers I guess it was in the 90s when the back pass rule was eliminated. Since then, the goalkeepers have become a bit more integrated into the team and are playing more soccer, essentially, like becoming a bit more similar to the rest of the field. But there is still a lot of things that they do that is extremely different and illegal for most of the other players to do. So because of that, I think a lot of people have difficulty assessing goalkeeper play, aside from did they stop the shot or did they make a big mistake? Are there any little specific things that you could tell a lay person to look for when watching a goalkeeper? Like, this is the thing that you can tell a good keeper will do well.
Sure. Yeah. So even just talking about playing out of the back, and each team has their own philosophy on how willing they are to use the goalkeeper to play out of the back, right? Where I came from in the last club I worked with, there was very little playing out of the back. Where the goalkeeper had it, we'd play one way. If it wasn't, if you couldn't, if there wasn't a pass, then you play long and you get up and you squeeze the line and you try to win second balls. So here is totally different. Where yes, I mean, you want to recirculate through the goalkeeper often and trying to find making sure the goalkeeper knows his best options. So depending on each club, and yes, it's definitely evolved. I mean, gosh, I remember when that rule changed, and even as a goalkeeper, I'm thinking, what do we do here? We have to play with we can't pick it up anymore. So yeah, I remember it being a challenge for me. And I never got to the point where Brad, what we do here, Brad and Tarbell, and I wasn't ever asked to do what they do as well. And sorry, I started going on a rant. And what was what people can look for?
Yeah.
Well, for instance, something that we've been talking about with our goalkeepers is staying connected with our back line, right, and their positioning and how high a positioning can they take. And in terms of what they're reading, right, in terms of when that through ball is coming, how many options does the opponent six have? Are there two or three people running across the line? Is there just one person running behind the line? And can you lean a little bit more toward the left or toward the right? So there's stuff like that that I would say most people aren't looking for. And in terms of crosses. Where is the keeper positioning himself and crosses? We're pushing our goalkeepers here to be aggressive, right? We don't want our keepers drifting towards a near post if there's a wide cross. And again, I don't think most people are looking for these specifics. unless you're specifically assessing the goalkeeper, right? Or are your goalkeepers catching the ball instead of punching the ball? So yeah, and depending on what you value as a coaching staff as well. Right. I mean, we've really been pushing, like going back to the crosses and being aggressive. We've been pushing our goalkeepers to really be assertive and take control of the box, dealing with narrow crosses, dealing with floated crosses, So yeah, little positioning aspects, I guess, if you really want to watch a goalkeeper for 90 minutes, which I can't imagine would be all that exciting to every fan. But yeah, there's little moments like that you can look for.
So I was researching, looking around on Google and stuff before we decided to record, and I was looking for some like weird Preston Burpo stories or moments, and either you don't have any or you've done a good job of hiding them. But what I did find was like a lot of stories about your connection to the fans in Seattle, and I know you spent a long time there, but I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that relationship, and then, maybe like Brad seems to have done a little bit of that already here. Like, is that a keeper thing, or like just talk about how that was important to you?
Okay. I know. Well, big differences again. Just like game model of the way we play here and the way I was asked to play way back when. Social media. There was no social media back then, or it was just coming to, and even still, I'm not a social media person, but so I know that there's that, and I know that Brad takes part in the social media world, and he seems to embrace it, and he seems to love being like letting fans in on his world, which I think is amazing. I think in my own way, when I played in Seattle, when you're there for so long, you get to meet fans after the games, before the games. And you take time to say hello and sign autographs. And I always knew that fans were a big part of every club. And we were back in Seattle Memorial Day weekend. And I mean, literally you see the same fans that were there however many years ago it was now, right? The last time I played there was 2005, right? And I mean, you kind of you wave to some of these people thinking, that's amazing that they've stuck through the club for so many years. So yeah, I enjoyed talking to fans. So is that why they like me? I don't know. I would hope they like me because we helped the club win a couple of games over the time I was there, right? I think that's why the fans show up for the most part, is to see their club win. So yeah, and they know that I put a lot into it. They know that I wasn't afraid to put my body on the line in tackles and go into a crowd for crosses, and yeah. So I gave everything I had for the club while I was there. So I don't want to speak for them and why they embraced me, but I would think that would have something to do with it.
Yeah, I definitely got that connection from reading those stories. And I think one of them was about you sort of sneaking into the supporters section, maybe in a game in later years, and just watching with the fans and how much they appreciated that.
So what happened was I was actually working. I just started working for Montreal. They asked me to go scout a couple people that played for Vancouver and Seattle. They were on our list for potential expansion draft. And so they sent me out there, and then in the second half, I had terrible seats in the first half. So a friend of mine, the friend that I was with, that went to the game with me, we decided to go sit in the sounder section. One, because we just thought it would be kind of cool to see what the energy was like, and I wasn't going there to get handshakes and hellos. I tried to sneak in actually, and a couple of people saw me, but it was cool. I mean, just to feel the energy of that. And they actually ended up winning the Cascadia Cup that night in Vancouver. And I mean, they passed me the cup, which was kind of and a little bit funny, a little bit like I didn't want the attention, but at the same time, kind of special knowing that I had some really fun years there.
Oh, that's really cool. I mean, I think it shows a real connection there. So for those of us that don't spend a lot of time watching practice or game weeks, like what does practice look like? What does game day look like as a goalkeeper coach? What are you focused on?
Sure. Yeah. Tying in, some concepts for the goalkeepers, segueing into the team training, right? If we're working on building up from the goalkeeper on that day, working with the goalkeepers with that while I have them for the first 30, 40 minutes, depending on the time. But making sure, the training session flows really well with the group I have. And most days it's Pulisic, Stuver, Tyrell, and myself. There's been weeks where we've brought in college goalkeepers just to assess them, right? So that adds to it. But mainly just making sure they're physically, get activated quickly, and then there's a really smooth flow. And on most days we're working on some type of distribution integrated into shot stopping or crossing. And just before I came here, I realized that I need to add as much distribution as possible, knowing that the way we want to play. So, and trying to get guys up to speed in terms of being comfortable with the ball. So trying to, making sure that's ready to go before the day, the training begins. Touching base with the goalkeepers usually to check in how they're physically doing. For instance, this morning, Brad and I watched a couple minutes worth of video. Some days I'll touch base with all three of them, maybe from the training the day before, with a couple video clips. Then in the afternoons, it's again going through the training, making sure you've got some ideas for the next day, and then prepping for the game and trying to make sure the guys have an idea of what they're looking for. When they are building out of the back, what type of pressure they're going to be under, who's pressuring them. And then we provide them with video of their of their attackers, what they look like, where the shots are coming from. There's video of their penalty kicks and who their top choices are. So there's a lot, and it's changed. It sure has changed over the years, where players are provided with a lot of information, and our keepers, the guys that have been involved on game days with us, right? You've got Stuver, Tarbell, and Pulisic. Boy, they take on the information, they embrace it, they've been willing to learn. And so that's been the best thing about this goalkeeper crew. And Brady Scott, he has done that as well, but now he's out on loan at the moment in Memphis. But all these guys, they have been willing to take it all on and saying, listen, I'm here to get better, which has made our jobs as coaches enjoyable working with these guys.
So Brad Stuver has been one of the biggest stories, if not the biggest story in Austin FC's short history so far. What is it like working with Brad, and what are some of the things that kind of make him unique compared to other players that you've worked with in the past?
Sure. Well, going back to the tie-in of these guys having a growth mindset, when we sat down with Brad at the beginning of the year, we said, Brad, here's certain things we saw in your game when you played for New York over the last couple years, right? And we said, we're going to work on those. And here's video, and here's how we're going to do it. And each day we'll chip away at these things. And in preseason, he would come in the next, after a day of training, he'd come in and he'd have notes after going through it and watching it on his own. And boy, he was meticulous on his note taking and what he thought of certain plays. And not every single day we'd watch video, but then when we would, he would say, I saw this, and then we would have a conversation. And his willingness to get better at 30 years old and being a pro now for a long time, whatever it's been, 8-9 years, his willingness to get better is why he is where he is now. Now, are there still things he can get better at? And are there still things we're challenging him? Without a doubt. But he has taken this thing on and said, I want to get better. I want to be the starter, and I'm willing to play out of the back. And I'm willing to there's going to be trainings where, yes, it's not going to go as perfectly as we want. And in games like what happened the other day, not a perfect pass, but the next moment he has the ball, he's playing out of the back again. So his willingness to take on challenges and to make himself better is why he is where he is, for sure. Now we've challenged him in terms of, now he's established himself as our starter, is now not only is he making sure he's right in every way, physically, tactically, technically, now what else can he do for other players? How much can he help Alex Ring on a certain day? Does he need to check in with Rodney Rennes? Does he need to check in with Jared Stroud, Manny Perez? And like now, like checking in with certain guys and helping them out each day. So he's taking a lot on. And he seems to be comfortable with the role that he's put himself in.
You hear Josh Wolf and Claudio Reyna talk about his kind of calming presence on the field and his ability to stay calm in those pressure situations. And then you mentioned kind of that learning mentality being a strength. Switching back to the more technical aspects of his game, if you were talking to another goalkeeper coach, what are one or two things that you would say that Brad does technically very well?
Well, his handling, his hands, he's got clean handling. And one thing that's been a big point of emphasis with us is just making sure his feet are set. He had a little bit of a hop in New York, and it wasn't major. It wasn't even a huge part of his shot stopping, but we talked a lot about it when we first sat down with each other and said, if we can just get you set a little bit earlier, and then we're talking split seconds earlier, that will help you save so many more shots. And within trainings and now games, like you really see that coming to fruition. And again, it's because he's taken this on. He's been willing to get better at this. I mean, Josh and myself and the other assistants, like we can talk all we want, but if the player's not willing to do it, then it'll be a challenge to get better. But Brad has taken it all on, and that's, you know, and he's excelled at it, no doubt.
Do you have anything else, Jeremiah, before we wrap up?
No, I think this is great. Thanks you very much for your time, Preston. I really appreciated hearing from you and getting to learn a little more about the craft of goalkeeping in a way that I did not at all before.
Yeah, Preston, thanks so much for joining us. This has been fantastic.
Okay, guys. Yeah, really appreciate the support. It's, you know, I'm telling you, I'm not even kidding. I get goosebumps when I walk out on the field for warm-ups. I get goosebumps when the first whistle blows. It is you guys are making this club amazing and special to walk out to our stadium. So thank you guys for everything.
Yeah, we feel the same way, and we appreciate that Brad seems to be learning the chants too, which I was going to add. Like we see him like singing under his breath on some of them during stoppage.
Okay, well that's good. I see that's something I haven't picked up on, but I'll be looking for that next game.
You just tattled on him, Jeremiah. Brad's going to get in trouble at training next week. All right. Well, thanks again, Preston.
Okay, guys. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Talk to you.
All right. We want to thank Preston one more time for joining us. I hope you guys really enjoyed that interview as much as we did. Before we wrap up, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And we'd also like to encourage you to come find us on Twitter and Instagram. I am at LViajero87. Jeremiah is at JBentley_ATX. And then we're both on Twitter and Instagram at Moontower Soccer. We'd also encourage you to visit the Striker Texas website. Jeremiah, do you have any articles you want to plug this week?
Yeah, I have one specific article I want to plug. We talked about Danny Pereira and how much at 20 years old he's meant to the club so far already. And Chris Bills wrote a really good piece called Irreplaceable on him, which talks about how while Danny's the future, we probably should not be building around him, just yet because of who he is. And not who he is, but where we are. And the second thing is there's going to be a ton of Gold Cup coverage all around on the Striker Texas. So if you're into the Gold Cup, I would encourage everybody to check all of that out. Because I think Chris, Victor, and John are all spending a lot of time writing about those stories.
John Arnold is like one of the foremost CONCACAF experts in the world. And so to have him on staff writing about the Gold Cup, it's like, that's about as good as you can do right there. So definitely check out his work. All right. Thanks so much for listening. We will be back in 1 week with a new episode of Moontower Soccer, where we'll cover the latest in Austin FC news and this Tigres match that you may or may not have already seen. We're also going to do a Seattle Sounders preview with, we can go ahead and say who it's going to be with, right?
Yeah, let's do that.
It's going to be with Jeremiah O'Shan of Sounders at Heart, which is a long running, I think they're part of SB Nation, but have like a whole website where they post articles and also do a podcast, and they're doing really, really good work. So we're excited to have Jeremiah come on and talk about the Sounders a little bit with us. We'll be back soon. Until then, my name's Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.